everyone, my name is Deborah J, and today I said I would make a video to give you a little bit of a view into soul navigation. What is it all about? What is it that I'm actually doing? And just even show you astrologically what it is that I look in the chart to be able to uncover some of the mysteries behind who we are and what it is we're doing. So personally, my own feeling is in life, a lot of the frustrations, the anxiety, the stress, the feeling lost, the confusion, a lot of these feelings and emotions are caused simply by our lack of connection to ourselves. Now, what does that even mean? Basically, we live in a society, we live in a world that has programmed us from a very, very young age to be codependent on the system. And the reason I say this is if you look at nature, nature has been pretty untouched by man. So if you look at birds and bees and the animals and the trees, and you look at nature in its most purest form, it changes and flows with the seasons. It changes and flows in the natural rhythms of life. You don't see birds sitting back watching TV commercials, wondering, which bird seed is the best one that they should be eating. You don't see, little animals running around kind of like looking at billboards and going, oh, I must eat that food and I must go to that shop and I must wear this coat. So what I'm saying is we are very, very codependent on our external environment to tell us how to eat, sleep, drink, exercise, how to be, how not to be, what to wear, what not to wear, how to fit in, how to not fit in. The world basically is constantly programming us to be in a particular way. And there is very much like this copy and paste way of living our lives. We think that we're supposed to be the same as everybody else, and we're just not. And I see this very much in when I'm doing astrological charts for people. Everybody's chart is so completely, totally different. And by looking at that, it actually shows us how we're meant to be different. We're meant to be living out our own unique purpose and journey in this life. And I always give an example of this. Not long ago, it was maybe only a couple of months ago, I had a client who said to me, Deborah, I don't seem to be able to have fun. I don't know what it is that I need to do. I need to bring in fun into my life. Now, the transits at the time were really, really challenging to her fifth house. The fifth house is all about fun and games, and it's that kind of creative part of our chart. And when I looked at it, she had Capricorn there. And I just said to her, I said, well, what's your definition of having fun? And she was like, well, I don't know. I don't really know, how to have fun or what it is that I like or enjoy doing. And I just said to her, well, look, you've got Capricorn on the fifth house. So for me, that would read to me that you perhaps maybe enjoy organizing things. If you like putting structures in place, you like to be able to, and she kind of stopped me and she was like, oh my God. And I was like, yeah. And she said, like last week, I re-alphabetized my entire library and I also color coordinated it. And she was like, oh my God, and I really enjoyed it. And I was like, you had a lot of fun. She was like, yeah, I had loads of fun. And I was like, okay, so your definition of fun and enjoyment is very different to how other people have fun and enjoyment, where if you had Leo in the fifth house, it's at home and it's very vibrant and like lots of fun, very like charismatic and childlike and playful. So we kind of see the outside world, and what I mean by the outside world, TV shows, movies, whatever it is, advertisements, however we're being marketed to, it's almost like there's this mainstream way of doing things. And when we're not doing them, we feel like we're doing something wrong. We feel like we're strange or odd or different, or we don't fit in. And the reason I love astrology is one of the starting points in what I do is because it shows us who we are. It shows us how unique and how different we are. And it shows us how to live our life according to us, not according to the external world, which has been programming you since you were a child, with expectations. The word should be banned. We all use it. I use it. But the word I should be doing it this way. I should be doing it that way. It's such an oppressive word. So there's like a couple of different things that I look at when I'm working with clients. And one is, we live in a world also where the self-help industry is absolutely massive. It's a huge industry. And there's a reason for it, because to me, the self-help industry is, while it's very, very helpful for people and it helps to raise consciousness, there's a bit of a glass ceiling. And I kind of see a lot of pop spirituality is what I'm calling it, out there, where we're supposed to go around with, smiles plastered on our face, living with love and light and unicorns and rainbows, and we're supposed to be hovering 3 foot off the ground and in this constant state of bliss. And if you're not, then you're not spiritual enough. And that is just absolute BS. And I'm calling BS on it, because being spiritual is not about walking around in positivity every minute of the day. It's actually way more than that. We're spirits having a human experience, but we don't have bodies for no reason. Our bodies are a tool. They're literally a tool for us to be able to remember what it is that we're doing here. We come to this life with this amnesia. We come in not remembering who we are, where we came from. And part of the journey of life is to go through the programming, to then at some point awaken to the fact that it is programming, and then to deprogram ourselves and to awaken to the light that's inside of us. And that's part of that mission. So this is another thing that I kind of look at in terms of kind of breaking, popping some of these spiritual bubbles. So I would say, in terms of the spiritual path of things, what I do is a lot more practical spirituality, practical woo-woo. So I would look at using the emotions and feelings as signposts and guides to bring you home to yourself, because it's in those triggers, it's in those challenges, it's in those difficult interrelationships that we have with people that actually we get to know ourselves the best. So these are just a few things that I look at. So when I'm doing a session with somebody, we start off with astrology. And the reason that we do that is astrology is like the map that begins your journey. If you don't have a map, you don't know where you're going, you're wandering around aimlessly, it's going to be very hard to get to the point that you want to get to if you don't know where it is that you're going. Or if you think you know where you're going, but you're not really totally sure. It's going to take a lot longer to get to where you want to go. You're going to find it more difficult to navigate through bypasses and different parts of the course if you don't have that map with you. So I liken it to starting at the very beginning of your journey, and you have this map in front of you. And so astrology basically shows you who you are, who you're not, why you're here, what your life mission is, what your soul purpose is, the people that you're going to meet along the way, the challenges that you're going to meet and maybe overcome, the opportunities that you can find, the relationships and how they may challenge you, or certain aspects of your life that you may find more challenging than other people. And one of the things I love about astrology is when we begin to see ourselves in black and white on paper, which we're going to look at now in a moment, we can see that the things that we find most challenging in ourselves, that we've been trying to fix in ourselves, are actually, they're part of us. They're part of that imprint, and they're part of our journey. We're not meant to fix them away, and by fixing them away, we're actively rejecting parts of ourselves, and that's what's keeping us miserable. And a lot of the reason for that is, if you reject it before somebody else rejects you for it, then you have control over it and you can feel better about it. But actually, we're causing ourselves an incredible amount of pain by not getting to know and accept and integrate that part of ourselves instead of rejecting it. So that's part of that journey as well. So stop fixing ourselves. Also, the connection that we need to have with ourselves. We spend so much time getting to know other people that we don't really get enough time to spend getting to know ourselves. We think we know ourselves, but we don't really. How often would you say that you've met somebody and if you want to meet somebody for the first time, you're not going to bring them to the noisiest place in town. You're going to bring them somewhere quiet so that you can hear them, so that you can understand them and get to know more about them. How often do you do that with yourself? Do you bring yourself to a quiet place to be able to get to know and understand yourself? I guarantee you, if you have children or partners or family that you're living close to, I guarantee you that when they're angry, sad, hungry, whatever it is, you'll know that their emotions are they didn't sleep right, or didn't have enough food, or somebody's upset them, or they feel put out about something. I bet you when your children are hungry or tired or upset. Same thing with your partner. The point is, do you know your own reactions when you're sad, upset, angry? And when you're in that space, do you know what those emotions, do you know where they're coming from? Do you know what's triggering them? Do you know why you're having them? Do they remind you of something else? So again, part of the work that I do will be to go into those areas, those places that most of us don't go to, and start to face them head on, so that they become smaller, so that the dial gets turned down on them. And when we get to know ourselves, you know, there's a lot of stuff in the spiritual world. It's like, you know, love yourself and have self-compassion, and you know, have self-respect for yourself, and like really get to know yourself. But what does that mean? You know, it's great somebody telling you all this, but then you need to know how to do that and why you're doing that. And again, this is something that I talk about more in detail when I'm coaching with people or when I'm doing sessions with people, and inside my group. It's something that I talk about a bit as well. So essentially, when you build that relationship with yourself, when you show up for yourself to get to know yourself a lot more, there's a part of you, if you can imagine you fragmenting, there's part of you that kind of looks and goes, oh, okay, she's showing up a bit more, so I can trust her with this information. And you start to release some of the stuff that's been trapped for years, simply because you've built a relationship of trust and rapport with yourself. So I could go on and on and on, but I'm going to stop here, because I'll just talk about this forever. I'm on my soapbox. I'm going to get back down off my soapbox now. But I'm going to share the screen, because what I wanted to do was briefly show you this screen here. What I wanted to do is I wanted to show you what it is that a chart looks like. So this is an astrological chart. It's just a random day and time, whatever, just randomly chosen. But I just wanted to show you what one looks like, okay? So what we're looking at here, when I'm actually looking at doing a session for somebody, normally what I'll do is I'll actually walk them through the chart, and I'll walk them through how it works, because I feel knowledge is power. And to be honest with you, I feel the more people who understand their own astrology the world would be a completely different place if in schools we had, you know, teachers saying, okay, kids, now take out your charts and we're going to look at your sun signs today. Like, the world would be completely different if we were taught at an early age to know ourselves. And part of my mission in this lifetime is to teach, teach, teach. So I wanted to show you this because I'm going to blast very quickly through it. You know, I can go in more detail at a later stage. But what we're looking at is essentially a snapshot at the moment you're born. This is what your birth chart is. It essentially is a moment in time, the minute you were born. We move into this planet, into this world, and our lives are kind of defined by where these planets are in the sky, the different houses that they're in, the different signs that they're in, etc. So everything kind of, it's like a photograph basically of the blueprint of you. So if you're standing on this chart, this is actually the horizon, okay? This section in the middle is the horizon. If you're standing here, this is east actually, and then this is west. So the sun rises in the east, it comes up over this horizon, up over the top, and then it sets in the west, okay, and goes back down underneath. So what we're looking at here is this is a nighttime chart. So this person, whoever it is born at 10:30 at night, okay? So we can see that the moon is actually up in the sky, so it's nighttime. Now, the way I would look at this personally is, a lot of people think that they're their sun sign. The back of the newspaper on a Sunday, you're reading your sun sign. You could be Taurus, Virgo, Scorpio, whatever it is. Yes, we are our sun sign, but we are so much more than that. So much more than that. We are every single planet, we're every single zodiac sign, and we're every part and place of our zodiac birth chart, okay, or our astrological birth chart. While this person would say have their sun sign in Taurus and their moon in Virgo and their rising sign in Scorpio, this is the rising sign here, they would probably resonate quite a lot with their moon. Now this moon here is actually on the MC, it's conjunct the MC, which is the highest point in our chart. And this person would resonate very strongly with that. But because it's a nighttime chart, this person is more likely to resonate quite strongly with their moon. If this was a daytime chart, they would resonate probably most strongly with their sun. It doesn't mean that they don't resonate with these other areas, but I often get people with me and they say, oh, like, you know, I'm Taurus, but I don't really feel that I have very many Taurus traits. I would ask them immediately. I'd be like, well, what time were you born? And they'll be like, oh, 10:30 at night, for argument's sake, along with this chart. And I'd be like, okay, well, then it depends on where your moon is, So that's one thing. So on the outside, what we're looking at here are the zodiac signs, okay? So these will be different in every single person's chart, depending on the time that they were born, and depending on the time of year and the whole lot, because these move around a lot, okay? So these are the different zodiac signs. This is your ascendant sign. Your ascendant or rising sign is the sign that of the moment that you were born. So if your sun sign, this one here, is the light and expression of who you are, then your moon sign is your emotions, your feelings, the things that are kind of hidden and not so obvious to everybody. They may be obvious because they may feel them. The moon is a very feeling luminary. So if you can imagine, the moon waxes and wanes. It changes a lot. It moves very quickly also. The moon takes about 2.5 days to go through each of the zodiac signs. And if we are all the signs, we have them all in different parts of our chart, then when the moon is going around the chart, when it's moving around the chart, it's going to ping off of different parts of your chart. And it's going to give you these different characteristics and traits and feelings, at different times. So here we've got the moon to do with your feelings, the sun to do with the light and expression of who you are, and then the rising sign. So the rising sign, I kind of liken it a little bit to, like, it's like the lenses that we look at the world and through which the world looks at us. So if you were standing in a room looking out a window to the rest of the world, the color of the window, the lens that you look from your, where you are out into the world is colored by your rising sign. So in this scenario, it's Scorpio. So you're going to look out into the world through that window with Scorpio type lenses. And equally, when the world looks through that window to you, it's going to see you through those Scorpio type lenses. So what does that mean? That basically means that you're probably quite Scorpio. So even though this person here would be sun sign in Taurus, they would resonate very strongly with moon conjunct MC. So your moon in Virgo, this person would be would have very strong links to Virgo, very Virgo traits in their emotions. But this person also would come across very Scorpionic. And we can talk about the different signs and that at a later stage. But basically, essentially, that's what I mean. So each of the different signs have their own traits and characteristics. This particular person would resonate and come across very Scorpionic in a lot of ways. It doesn't have to be in every single way. Again, we need to get rid of this notion of I am this sign, I am exactly like that. That's not how it works, because you can have a lot of aspects to it. You can have softer aspects that make the whole thing work a little bit easier. So that's essentially your zodiac signs, your sun, moon, rising. Then what we're looking at here, these spokes of the wheel, or these pizza slices, as a lot of people call them, are essentially the houses. So when you hear people saying, oh, I've got my sun in the 5th house in Taurus or whatever, this is what they're talking about. These are the houses. So literally, if you can imagine that each house represents a room in our lives, somewhere that different parts of our development, different parts of our journey through life. So just to blast through them, the first house is the house of self. It's your personality. It's who you are. Me, I. The second house is the house of money, possessions, values, things that are more kind of physical in our world. It's also our skills and talents. The third house is the house of communication. It's the house of short distance travel. So, hopping up to the shops and back, or going to post office and back. It's education, but more so like at a more local level. So like school or secondary school or whatever like that. It is also the house of siblings. So you'll find your siblings in here in some way, shape or form in terms of their energy. You'll find your siblings in here. The fourth house is the house of home. It's the house traditionally of the father, contemporarily of the mother. It's your caregivers. It actually, I've had clients where it's been the mother or father, so it depends. It can be either or. You just kind of need to, you'll know yourself when you actually have a look at, this is the cusp of the house. So wherever that lands, that's going to be the energy of the parent here, and that's going to be the energy of the parent here. So in this scenario, this particular person would have a parent with quite Piscean traits or a parent with quite kind of Virgoian kind of traits. Okay, it doesn't mean that they are Virgo or Pisces, it just means that they have energy of that. To be honest, quite often you'll actually get a parent who literally are that sign, but it's not always the case. So this is so it's fourth house is kind of like your home life, your family, where you're kind of more comfortable in terms of like you're growing up and that. The fifth house is the house of fun and games. It's the house of sex. It's the house of creativity. So even if you can imagine the creative force, the vital force, creative force of sex is to have children. So you'll find your children in here. And whatever the cusp is on here, you'll find that that's the traits of, you know, your first children will be quite with that energy. So in this case, they'll be kind of quite Aryan in their energy. Then we have the sixth house. The sixth house is all about work, service to other, your daily routines. It's to do with your health also. This is one of the houses. So the second house is one of the houses that we look at for career astrology, because it looks at your skills and talents and, you know, your money and all that kind of area. The sixth house is another career house that we look at. It's to do with what you do on a daily. So if you're in a job where you are just looking, you know, working to pay the bills, it's not serving your sole purpose, but you're, you know, it's you just do it and whatever, that's going to be where your sixth house is. This is also where you would look at, you know, how to operate on a daily basis to give you most satisfaction. The seventh house is the house of one-to-one relationships, business partnerships, and open enemies. So it's here that we find a lot about our relationships. So now we can start to see that we've come from me, I, money, home, and we're kind of going into the working world. You can see the bottom half of the chart is very much about your kind of the roots of the tree and how you develop, you know. When we get above ground as such, we start to look at our relationship to other people. So if this is the house of relationships, one-to-one relationships, marriage, it's usually long-term relationships and marriage, you know, shorter term flings and relationships and sex kind of go in here. This is the long-term relationships. Usually there's even legal contracts. It's the house of legal contracts as well. But you'll see that it's opposite the first house. So if the first house is all about me, the seventh house is all about your relationship with somebody else. So we start to get these kind of polarities, and it's really, really beautiful in astrology when you can learn to be able to look at both of these axes together and how one can benefit the other. And really this huge amount of growth comes through that. When I'm doing the soul or life path astrology, these are things that I'd look at as well. The eighth house is the house of life, death, and rebirth. It's the house of debt and taxes. It's the house of things kind of like the occult, sex again. It is about other people's finances. It's down as a hidden house in that because of its position to the ascendant. I quite like it. I myself, I'm got a bit of Scorpio in my chart, so for me, I kind of tend to like the things that other people don't like. So this is a house that some people like and some people don't like. The ninth house is the house of wisdom, higher learning, philosophy, higher mind education. It's kind of like, you know, it's also long distance travel. So where we've got the oppositions here again, we can look at, actually when we look here at the eighth house being other people's money, you can see it's opposite the house of your own money. So this is where you've got this kind of axis going again. So the ninth house being the house of higher learning, you'll find then it's opposite the house of the third house, which is all to do with kind of more local learning. If the ninth house is long distance travel, the third house is short distance travel. If the third house is more about kind of facts and ideas, the ninth is about higher mind and wisdom. So it's about, you know, philosophy and even religion and all that kind of area. It's also the house of publishing as well. So the 10th house is the house of career. It's where it's basically the highest point. You've got the MC here, and the MC is the midhaven. It's the highest point in your chart. And essentially, it's your most public face. It's how the public sees you. So if you're looking to have a career, the career house is here. It's the 10th house. This is kind of like, I liken it to, you know, at some point in your life, if you want to stand butt naked in front of the world and really see who you are, this is where your MC is going to come in, because that's really how people view you, and it's how people see you in the grander scheme of the world. So in terms of the public, the 10th house is all about career. It's to do with structures. It's to do with kind of even down things like finance world, government bodies, all those kind of very left brain structured kind of areas. And then we have the 11th house. The 11th house is hopes and wishes fulfilled. It's to do with your friends. It's other people's children. So if the 5th house is to do with your children, the 11th house is to do with other people's children, which is basically everybody else in the world. It's also, you find any group work, and that will kind of come in here as well. It's a very humanitarian house. The 12th house is the house of, the 12th house is another hidden house because it's deemed to be unseen by the first house, or by your rising sign, should I say. And I liken it to, imagine a room with the lights are, imagine the lights are broken in a room. You can't turn on the lights. And there is loads of treasure in there. There's loads of goodies in there. There's some not so goodies in there. There's loads of treasure as well, but you can't see anything that's in there. This is a bit like that. You walk into a room, there's loads of stuff to be, you know, discovered, but you can't see it. You can't put your hands on it. So the 12th house is your spiritual connection. It's also the house of karma. It is the house of sacrifice, the things that you give up in this lifetime. It's also, you know, if we can imagine we're being brought into this world on the rising sign here, on the ascendant, depending on your belief system, the 12th house comes just before the ascendant, before you're kind of born into this world. So it's kind of almost like the karma that you bring with you from your last life, from your past life. So it's very much a spiritual world. It's kind of where you, how you retreat out of the world, what you need in order to be able to retreat, and as I say, that spiritual connection. That, my friends, is a quick tour around the birth chart to give you a feel for how it all works. So then after that, we have the different planets. So you've got your sun here, your moon here. What I would normally look at in a career astrology session is I would look at the sun, moon, rising. I look at the north node. I would look at the 2nd, 6th, and 10th house, because they're your career houses. And then in terms of life pattern career astrology, I would look at sun, moon, rising. I would look at your north node, Chiron. This is Chiron here, which is the wounded healer. And obviously there's loads more that I look at, but they're kind of like the main nuggets and points of what I'd kind of take into consideration. There's loads of other things that you look at, you know, different angles to certain aspects that are in the chart as well. Is there any challenges or oppositions or difficult angles? You know, then we have, you know, the daytime and nighttime charts have different benefics and malefics in terms of planets, ones that bring us more fortune and others that don't. There's so much to look at. Like, astrology is a really huge subject. It is a language all by itself. But what I wanted to do today was to just give you that view into what it is that we look at in the chart and how it is that works. And it's really important for the time to be accurate, because as you can see here, this particular chart, if it was a half an hour before or afterwards, this could jump into being the rising sign of being Sagittarius. And that would give a whole different color and flavor to the person that we're talking about. It would also jump the houses around. So the houses would kind of get bigger or smaller in different areas, which means, you know, little, you know, like the sun might end up in a different house, the north node might end up in a different house, the moon might end up in a different house. And so it's really, really important to know the sign. If you don't, or the sign, the time, should I say, if you don't know your time, there are ways of finding it out. It's a bit like trying on shoes in a shoe shop. It's a bit of a backwards way of figuring out the time. Once we have a rough idea, there is ways of doing it. So if you're interested in doing a session, if you're interested in a reading, if you're interested to find out more, if you have questions after looking at this video, then drop me an email at deborahjsoulnavigation@gmail.com. You can get me on Facebook, on Instagram. I'm all over the place. online. You'll get me, go to deborahjkelly.com and you'll find all the links there. And yeah, just drop me some messages. I absolutely love answering questions. So whatever is kind of tweaked for you in this, I'd love to be able to help and support you if you have any queries on it. So that was a whirlwind trip around the chart. I will be doing more videos to give you a bit more of a view into the rest of soul navigation, how it works. As I said, astrology is only one section of the whole thing that I do, because it really just is the map for where we can get started. And I find when I'm doing a session with somebody, there's huge aha moments of like, oh, I'm not crazy. This is just me, and I've been trying to fix this part of me forever. But actually, it's part of me, and I can't change it. Or not that you can't change it, but it's what I find whenever I do sessions. People have a view of who it is that they're meant to be, and underneath that, they have you know, you might have said to yourself, oh, I thought about this when I was a child, or I thought about this when I was a child, and then you kind of lost it and you went off in a different tangent and did in the world what you thought you were meant to be doing. And quite often when we're doing a session, I'll hear people saying like, oh, that's mad, because I've always thought about doing it that way and I just didn't know whether that was the right thing or not. I find most people know what it is that they're meant to be doing. They just don't trust it, or they don't know how to interpret it. And soul navigation is essentially showing people how to interpret their world, how to interpret the messages around them. If you have reoccurring patterns that keep happening over and over again, if you keep meeting the same kind of people, if you keep getting triggered by the same kind of events, there's a reason for it. Your world is communicating with you. Your world is trying to give you answers to the questions that you're searching everywhere else for. And what I found is when you do this work, I always say it's not easy, but it's simple. So the work is simple, but it's not always easy. And it takes a certain type of courageous, curious character to want to go there, to want to really get to know themselves, to want to build that relationship with themselves and really, really uncover their soul purpose, their life purpose, and to live in full alignment with themselves. This world needs you. And I really, really mean that. Our world is trying so hard to wake up, and it's hard to do that with so many trying to wake up and not really knowing how to. And the work that I do is essentially showing people how to reconnect themselves with their inner wisdom, showing them how to find themselves and to stop searching outside for the answers. Because the answer is, when you realize it, when you do this work, you will someday sit back and realize that for years you were looking in all the wrong places because you were looking out here. You're looking to other people to answer your questions. You're looking to do workshops and courses and read books and whatever. And they're all very helpful, but it's that glass ceiling again. There's a moment in time where you have to stop and ask yourself, after all the therapy, after all the books, after all the courses, after all the work that I've done, are you more clear now on what it is that you want to do? You will get to a certain extent where if you're doing this work, you'll be like, yes, I'm more clear. But again, there's that glass ceiling. So if you're searching, and also self-help is an addictive tool. So we don't see that very clearly. Self-help is addictive. If you're compulsively trying to help yourself, eventually you're going to have to ask yourself the question of, why am I still the same way that I am? And what is it that I'm trying to fix in myself? Because if you keep trying to fix parts of yourself and you're still not fully getting there, then there's a part of the puzzle missing. And that part of the puzzle that's missing is that you're banging your head on a wall because you're searching for the answers outside. So you will reach that glass ceiling, having done all the work, and eventually someday it will tweak with you that why am I not getting any further? And the reason you're not getting in further is because you need to go inwards. And in order to go inwards, you need to build a relationship of trust with your energetic self so that you can connect with your inner wisdom. Your inner wisdom, when you start to use it correctly, is what will show you where to go, how to get there, the blocks that are in your way. Your inner wisdom will start to release old traumas. It'll start to release old blockages, and it will do it in very, very integrated, very, very beautiful, beautiful way. Your body is very happy to release a lot of the junk that you've kept in it for years, but it's not going to release it by you saying, right, get out of here and throwing it away. It's only going to release it when you show up to it, when you start to show that you can drive this Ferrari. You know, it's like handing the keys of a Ferrari to a 20-year-old. You're not, you know, who hasn't done any driving. You're not going to do that. But if that person keeps showing up every day to do the work, to do the work, to do the work, and to show, you know, I can turn up, I'm responsible, I can read my body, I can read my emotions, I can understand and interpret the world around me, I can now understand how challenges are beneficial, I can now understand the relationships that I'm in, and I can see the benefits of all these. When we start to understand our world more clearly and build a relationship with ourselves, your world will quite literally change. And I promise you that, because I was the most stuck, unfixable human on the planet. I really thought, I was like, well, I'm just one of those people who's like, I'm just one of those people who's doomed to be stuck on, you know, factory default settings. But I'm not, and I'm creating my own world, and I'm no longer victimized by my world. I'm more empowered by my world. But I myself, I'm human, and even I have days where things are really, really crap, and I have loads of days where I get triggered. But it's having the tools and knowing how to use them that will change your life. This is not something that you do one day, you turn it on, and that's it, done for the rest of your life. As humans, we're evolving, we're changing, we're growing. And so we have to understand that spirituality is not a place that we're getting to, but it's being comfortable and confident with where you're at and feeling into what is the next move. What is the next place that I need to put myself into? How can I open my awareness? How can I become more aware of who I am and what it is I'm doing here? And to uncover your own unique mission. You know, we all have our own individual purposes and our own individual missions. And when you start to look at astrological birth charts, you'll see that so clearly. Like, it's never been so clear to me than it is when I'm doing these sessions, how some people are here to do some parts of the mission in the world and other people are here to do other parts. And it's really, really beautiful. And it allows us to have so much more compassion for each other as well. So I hope this has been in some way helpful. I would love to hear from you. I would love to answer any questions that you have, and I shall talk to you soon. If you want to check out my website, it's deborahjkelly.com. Thanks.